Hey, everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Struggle. This is part two of our two-part series. If you missed part one, you can look above Jason's head and you'll see a link to
join my hair.
Yeah, you'll see a link to. Again, we're joined with Miss Chris Gatlin,
Thank
and
you.
we appreciate you joining us again.
My pleasure.
Whatever you got to do, you do it. I was just listening to you, and I hear you talking the way you have just talk about it and the way you've handled it. And I was there that night as well. And to be a part of your family and to, it meant so much to me that Diane and you needed me there, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that I was able to help um, through that tragic period of time and just kind of be there for y'all means a lot for one. And then it's like, we lose touch and all those things. But to hear you talk about, um, being a mother, doing everything she can, and um, finding this peace within yourself, knowing that he's at peace, right? That to me is one of the
I have a ritual I go through every day. I get up at 5, I have my little cup of coffee, I say my prayers, and the last part of my prayer is for God to please take him into heaven.
yeah.
And then I have a picture of Tim, where I can see it, where I sit in my living room, and I ask him to watch over us and the kids and stuff. And when I go to bed, the last thing I have is my picture of Tim, And I want to tell you this, and then I'm going to probably cry. Not long after Tim passed, I found one of his journals, and I thought, should I read it? Should I not read it? And, the curiosity got the best of me.
Absolutely, yeah,
Right.
I read it, and I was
I waited
moved.
10 minutes. Yeah.
I was moved by the things that he wrote and he said. And then I thought, nobody else needs to read this. And I asked Mike to build a fire, and I burned the whole thing. And I thought, I read it. It's over. It's done. Send those prayers up and let that be it, so.
What do you think the impact that Tim's recovery, addiction recovery, and his tragedy had on others in the family, like his brother, stepbrother?
Tim died in May. It was either June or July. First of all, my husband quit drinking, and he had drank his whole life.
Yeah.
Still hasn't had a drink. There's 5 years.
Oh, congratulations!
And all of a sudden, Jamie ended up in the hospital, and really bad. And you have to make a choice, and I'm not. And then Jamie started with, "I'm going to kill myself," and I'm there like,
May I ask
"Whoa."
who Jamie is?
Jamie is my stepson.
So the brother.
The
you were
brother.
talking about. Okay.
And they were close.
Yes.
And
Very
I
close,
said,
yeah.
Hey, you're going to do what you're going to do, but you can't hold me hostage with that.
Right.
Tim held me hostage with that his whole life. And I said, if you're going to do it, but you're not doing it in my house because
Yeah.
I can't take it, And he went through the recovery and, learned a lot of things. And I think he leaned on Tim's strength
Yeah.
emotionally and just the things he remembered, and he leaned on those things. And today we talk about it every once in a while. I see him like twice a week on a regular schedule. And just the other day I was going through some pictures looking for something and came across a picture of the two of them being goofy, and sent it to Jamie, and Jamie says, oh, that comes up in my Facebook every once in a while. But through all the tragedy, I think they were really close as brothers, even though they didn't hit it off in the beginning,
Right.
and
There was a little bit of distance.
yeah.
in it, but it's also two people struggling in active addiction, and it was this
yeah,
kind of like a yo-yo, or what do you call the slinkies, where it's like
yeah.
Tim's sober, Jamie's
Jamie's not.
sober.
Yeah, back
it's
and
like
forth, back
this,
and
and
forth.
so it was like this battle, and especially when two people are sick in active addiction together. That's never a
It's not good.
recipe for success whatsoever,
no.
But
Absolutely not.
I think the thing. Go
I
ahead.
remember this. this was when the boys were younger, but Tim had Mike's truck at one time, and he had a bumper sticker. I can always be a bad example, or I can always, something to that effect. And I'm there like, you're not a bad example. Trying to focus on the positive instead of the negative, and trying to switch that point of view of, looking at the positive. But that's not easy to do when somebody's got only seeing themselves in the rut.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I can always serve as a bad example. I think that's what it was, something to
I
that,
can only serve as a bad example.
something like that.
Yeah.
But I think in the end, ended up serving as an example to all of us.
I think so.
When
yeah.
that's what I heard, and God, I'm trying to
Yeah.
sit here and figure out how to say it, right? Because through the tragedy, obviously, and I believe we've talked about this
Yeah,
before, is
yeah.
like there's this loss, but like with this loss, you see this growth in other places, and I heard you within your family unit, it's like there's this tragic loss, right?
Right.
But then these growth in the husband, the growth in the brother, the growth here, the growth there, and also certainly like no mother wants to lose their child, but like I'm not held captive anymore, like, and you're not going to do it now, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
you
It freed me in that sense that I always felt like, like I said,
Yeah.
is today the day, or what next, or let the other shoe fall. But, it's like it was freeing in a way, but yet, that's not how you want to be free,
No. Yeah.
But I don't know how else to put it, but,
Yeah, and I think Jason kind of put it best too, is not to be held captive by old behaviors,
right.
no matter who it is,
Yeah,
right?
right,
Whether it's your husband, whether it's your stepson, another family member.
And I was able to use Tim's
Yeah.
circumstances to tell Jamie, not in my house,
Yeah.
not going to do it anymore. I cannot take it
Yeah.
emotionally. That's the route you're going to take. Well, you take it, but you're not going to do it here because I can't take it.
Yeah.
And he's
Well, I can't tell you how happy I am to hear that about both Jamie and your husband.
And one other thing, now that Tim's children are maturing, Tim's son is now 21. I know, yeah.
Bro, we getting old.
Wow.
Like,
But I can now have honest, sincere conversations with him about how much your dad loved you.
Yeah.
Your mom kind of kept you from him. She had her reasons,
Yeah.
but I'm here to tell you the good things about him
Yeah.
that I see in you. Now his daughter's just going to turn 18 in December, and I'm not there yet with her, but
Yeah.
she's still in high school, and she's not ready to have those
Yeah.
conversations nor to hear them. But the son is,
Yeah.
and he was fearful that, I hope I don't get an addiction like my dad. I said, well, let's talk about that.
Yeah, let's
That
talk
it
about
opened
it,
up
yeah.
a conversation to let's talk about that. I'm here for you. You can tell me anything, and I know people I can put you in touch with.
Right.
and I have I have a 16-year-old and a 9-year-old, two daughters, and like I'm very honest and open with them because like and like, look, this is not a conversation, this is my choice, but it's like I feel like that's the best route to go. It's like, trying to hide this past. Well, it's hard to hide when I do it for my job and I
Yeah.
do this but it's like I need them to understand, like, this is poor decision making. This is what that life got me. And being open and having those conversations with them has been I believe of benefit.
But now that I'm older, I can see where I probably couldn't have had those conversations
Yeah.
with Tim to some extent because I was still trying to protect him. I wasn't able to say, if you do this, this is
Yes.
the consequence, and I wasn't able to say so many times, you can't do that here, this and that, because I was still trying
Yeah.
to protect him and bring him into my home and trying to feed him and, everything else. But, now I can, like, to my grandson, if you do this, this is the consequence, and you have to look ahead at the consequence before you make these types of
Yeah.
life decisions.
Because you have experience now.
Well,
right?
that's true.
And it's like, we are able to do what we do based off of experience. I can tell someone that's dealing with addiction or dealing with these things that, like, if you do this,
Yeah, this is
because look how many times I've done that. What I say carries depth and weight now, and you've
Right.
lived it, you've seen it,
Right.
and now you're able to do that based on that.
Yeah, and we we don't understand the impact that we have on y'all, right? You, our parents, like we can, in our minds, we can kind of guess, and we know through experience of what we've done, but we'll never truly know one how much we have hurt them in any type of way. But we struggle with that. I have grown to have a great relationship with my dad. My mom's in a nursing home. I got engaged, by the way. I'm going to throw that out there, by the way. But no, one of the things that I wanted to get some input from you on, especially from the audience that we have, and the parents and the family members, what and I don't want to use the word advice. I want to use the word, maybe, based off your experience, what words of wisdom could you share,
I'm gonna,
with
I'm gonna tell you a story about that.
okay.
Years and years and years ago in another life, I had another stepdaughter who asked for saline solution, and I thought, I just bought saline solution, and I saw in her cabinet there was 3 saline solutions. Of course, God puts your hand on that. Opened it up, it was liquor. And when I talked to a physician who's a good friend of mine, his words to me and his advice at the time, it was 10-day treatment. What's 10 days compared to the rest of their life?
Yeah.
And that hit home to me, and so's this program. What's 28 days? What's 30 days compared to the rest of your life? And people don't understand that, and that hit me so hard that, oh, wow. Yeah, you can miss school for 10 days. Yeah, you can go do this and get out of your job for 30 days because it's going to impact the rest of who you are and the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So I guess part of that advice would be to do it. You don't lose anything. You gain stuff from it. You gain friends, you gain some experience, you gain some structure. They give you books and things to follow and stuff, and try it. One of the hardest parts for me was going there twice a week to visit.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's so hard. Is it a Wednesday night or a Wednesday after something?
That's all changed
Oh, that's
since
changed.
COVID.
Okay.
It's on Fridays now,
It's all changed,
Well, anyway, I can remember sitting with
Yeah.
other families, bringing food on Sunday, and
Yeah.
everybody kind of looking at each other. What now? What
Yeah,
now? We
right.
visited, we talked. What? It's
What does the
not
future hold now?
what
Yeah.
the future hold, and after you've said so many words and conversation, there's nothing left because it's a fake environment.
Yeah.
It's not real,
Yeah.
and until you get them back home and get them back into real environments, it just felt not real, But I mean, it was something you had to do, and then your heart just hit the bottom here on your way home, Again, questioning yourself, what can I do? What could I have done?
Yeah.
Is it my fault?
Yeah.
What did I do?
What
So-
about for parents, of those that children are struggling with addiction? What would you?
Okay. One of my, I guess, things would be find other parents, because collectively the parents can support each other. And, maybe my experience wasn't like yours, but maybe you add a story that helps carry it forward to somebody else. And there's times when those couple of parents who I know, there's no need for words. You can just look at somebody and and you can just offer a hug, and that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's in those quiet moments, in those little times where, everybody needs somebody. And,
Yeah.
we only have, I have 2 or 3 people, if I need a boo-hoo, I can call somebody anytime, day or night, and she'll listen, and,
Yeah.
or I'll talk, you just listen on the phone, that kind of stuff.
And that's kind of the, two of the words that we talk about often is me too. Two of the words that we have in, our recovery is our experiences. Me too. I've dealt with this too. Me too. Same thing with parents. We do have what's called, Al-Anon for those, family members of those that struggle with
Been there, done that.
And I'm seeing like
a lot of
what you're talking about at church, but there's one out by us in Denham. Excuse me, it's a large church, and they've started a grief support
Yeah.
group out there, and it's like you're seeing. But I think that's interesting. Just hearing you say that is like, finding those with these similar experience, right? Like, which again is what a part of this 12-step thing is
Right.
a bunch of us with the
Yeah.
similar experience.
And part of that is I don't have to explain myself.
Correct.
You know, I can just go up and say, I'm having a moment, you know, or I had a bad day, such and such. I don't have to tell them what it was about. I don't have to tell them whatever triggered that memory or what it was about. It's like they've been there, you know, they know that feeling, you know, and you don't have, and not to knock a spouse, but, you know, it's different.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, it's mother to mother, you know, because we were brought up to nurture. And then as a nurse, you know, you're brought up to
Yeah.
care for everybody. So I get excuse me, a double whammy there, you know. So I have two friends that are nurses that, you know, that's my base, my support, you know.
In your card games.
Card games, yes, indeed.
You know, and one of the final things I'll say is that, you know, and as you were talking and telling the story, and if I'm wrong, please let me know. But I believe that I heard you say that he dealt with some mental stuff even in his younger age, right? And to me, it's like, you know, that just shows kind of how we started this episode started this. We're talking about it's like it's not always a choice. This is something he dealt with from a
early
young
on.
age. Then these drugs and alcohol, was it or was it not? Who knows? But like we learned that drugs and alcohol are a solution to a problem, right?
right.
And so if I found this solution, but the underlying problem had been there from a you know, and so just telling somebody like that, hey, don't drink, and you
Right.
don't understand.
This is
You don't
what they're
understand
doing.
what?
Dealing with
Yeah.
this for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Right now, this is the only thing that,
helps calm.
Yes, until I can, you know, and
Helps
that's
me
what,
go to sleep.
and we try to provide, that's what we're trying to do is let's find another solution. If you take my solution away, right, the only thing that I know,
Is your past behavior.
yeah, and if I don't replace that, but that totally goes against the, you know, it's the somebody just saying, just don't do, just say no,
Yeah, just
right?
saying,
It's like,
right.
yeah, if it were only that easy, right?
I had somebody at church says, sometimes I just feel like slapping them, you know, or shaking them. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, you're not getting anywhere with that.
Yeah,
You know, that doesn't solve it.
it doesn't. You know, I can't thank you enough
Yeah.
for coming and sharing this today with us, you know, and talking a little bit about Tim and kind of keeping his memory alive, you know. And I know it. When I had asked you, I thought about maybe I didn't say enough of like, I really appreciate it, but you don't got to do it if you don't want to. Like, and it was real quick because I was real nervous to ask you.
Oh, you didn't
And,
need to be.
and
And after I said yes, I started to call you back and say, no, I don't want to go through that emotion.
Well,
but
and then I started
helped.
thinking about, you know, like how nervous I was to kind of bring some of that old back up. But I used him with a lot of people I work with, and I talk about the ups and downs and the tragic part of this addiction and mental health, you know. So I still try to keep his memory alive as much as I
Appreciate that.
can, you know.
I appreciate that.
And I'm not too much of an emotional guy, but you know, recovery's done that to me. I get some emotions.
I've been
sometimes.
honored to be a part of the conversation. You know, I was nervous. I don't really get nervous, and I was leaving work today saying, "Man, I'm like, this might be a heavy, you know." But I think that this is what we were looking for,
Yeah.
in the sense of like, how does this affect the lives of others, and the point of view of we can have the alcoholic sit here time and time and time again. You know, but it's like, let's talk about and to be, you know, and this was not a success story, right? It's not the wife sitting there saying, oh, he's been great and he's good for 10, 15, 20 years.
No.
You know, this is the other side of the coin, but it's reality.
And you talked about Tim early on having, you know, bipolar and stuff. Okay, one doctor managed the bipolar, one doctor managed GI issues, one doctor
Right.
managed this, and I am in the healthcare industry. I finally had to go to a friend of mine, and I said, I need one person
Yeah.
to be the point person to pull all this together, and that's going to be the person that's going to advocate for Tim. That's going to be the go-to. That's going to interpret or bring all these specialists together to decide what's wrong with my child. You know, and kudos to that doctor for doing that. And you know, but not everybody's me, and not everybody can pull that together. I was fortunate, but unfortunate in that nobody could diagnose what
Right.
was wrong with him.
Right. Right.
So, but Jeff, he loved you.
Yeah.
You know that. God, he loved you.
That's
You
how
were
I know
his
he must
rock.
have been a little. No, I'm just.
But,
No,
you
but
know,
you were his rock
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
lots
man.
of times.
And like I said, I use that, use him as an example and share our experience with one another, and just the overall experience that I had, um, with the relationship with his family and y'all. And I use that. That's a vital, important part of recovery and working with a sponsee and a sponsor, and just having that overall camaraderie with one another and fellowship.
I was on a conference call just before getting off to come here, and I was telling the lady, I was anxious to come as well. And she said, "Well, why are you doing it?" And I said, "Well, if it helps one person,
Yeah. That's
if it
right.
helps one person."
Yeah.
And that's what we do. Why we do what we do. If we can help just one person, or somebody sees this, or a mother sees this, and they're struggling, know that there's somebody that's out there. And you're not alone, right?
That's
You're
true.
not alone in the addictions you're dealing with. You're not alone in the loss of your son or daughter that has struggled with addiction, and you're not alone with someone who understands what they're going through.
Absolutely.
And I love you.
I love
you
you
know,
too. Thank y'all for having
Thank
me.
you.
I
Appreciate you
it.
coming
Thank
out.
you so
and
much.
sharing your story. We appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Anytime.
And
Thank you.
Jason, since I did the intro, you can do the outro this time, and so we'll see how it goes. Now that you're warmed up with Miss
I'm in a
Chris.
different chair. No, guys, thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you again for coming.
Absolutely.
I do believe this will help more than one person.
Absolutely.
So thank you. Guys, make sure to tune in next time. Like, follow, share, subscribe. We appreciate y'all joining us for another episode of Beyond the Struggle.